What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Thomas Dolby, and we're returning to the 1992 album Astronauts and Heretics. Once again, big thank you to Stan, as well as to Mark, who commented on this album. And yes, the next tune is Silk Pyjamas, which is a simple description. Silk pajamas sound very comfortable. I don't know if there's any particular, cultural or historical significance. I do believe the term pajamas comes from India, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, silk has a long history as a much coveted and valuable thread for making fabrics. But beyond that, I can't really think of what else might be relevant here. It could just be a particular artifact or point of interest in a larger narrative that is beyond the scope of the title phrase itself. I'll just have to see what I can catch on first listen. This is Thomas Dolby. Luca, you are sitting very perilously. I apologize. So that I don't roll the wheel of my chair over Luca's tail, I have to get up here. But yes, this is Thomas Dolby. The track is Silk Pyjamas, and it's from the 1992 album Astronauts and Heretics.
Silk pajamas, she was wearing silk pajamas. Usual outfit, big pith helmet, Dr. Martens, silk pajamas. Said it was driving her around the bend, just sitting and waiting for the phone to ring. She should have been back around 10:30, and has anybody seen my friend? She's so lovely in a green and red. Silk pajamas, gonna go far. Where's the high street? Where's the river? Where's the barker? Got to vanish. Doesn't speak a word of Spanish. Said it was driving her half insane to live in a city with no underground train. She took her she wandered off into the smoke for a Slurpee and a tofu dog, singing
all you gotta do is play it wrong and they're happy.
The little bit at the end is as funny as the entirety of the song that came before it. So, it's zany, it's crazy. I feel like one of the calling cards of Dolby's material is an unpredictability and a eccentric nature that a lot of other artists during the 80s and 90s seemingly just didn't have in the same way. And this one definitely feels like, a bit all over the place, but not in a bad way. It just feels like sonically there's this fiddle and a piano that feels very throwback, maybe not like ragtime, but almost like this like 19th century, early 20th century type of piano line mixed with a fiddle, meaning a violin played in a more like folksy way. And then eventually it sounded like we were hearing some organ chords as well, and those, they give a bit of a different vibe. And then this like blues or like blues rock style guitar then dominates the second half of the tune. There's like one of those percussion instruments where you're like sliding a stick across a like, serrated or like ridged like wooden surface. I don't know if that's exactly the kind of instrument it was. And something about those vocals mixed with the keyboard, it was almost giving me, and maybe even that like percussion sound, it was maybe giving me like African music or like, sort of world like folk music type of vibe. So sonically it was a real like coming together of some different elements, at least as my brain heard it. And then lyrically, I don't really know what to make of it. It sounds like this person is looking for their friend who wears pajamas in the day and in the evening, as well as Doc Marten boots, I believe, and who went somewhere and he doesn't know where, and he's looking in the high street and he's looking by the river. And at first I was like, oh, that, if you're looking in the river, maybe you're thinking they went to do something dire. But then he was talking about like, what's a city that doesn't have an underground train or, a subway, as we might call it over here, and then talking about like, then it was like something on the something something line, which sounds like they are maybe on a train, and obviously that could be an elevated train or a ground train or indeed an underground train. So yeah, I don't know where this person has gone, what they intend to do, or what they went looking for, but it sounds like he's searching for them and asking others if they've seen her, maybe? I forget in the moment whether there was like a specific like gendered pronoun, but I was like seeing it as like a woman in silk pajamas. But yeah, so like if the tune does have some more like intense or dark or at least like sense of worry, then the sonics feel they're on the opposite end of that scale. It feels again a bit light, a bit zany, a bit fun. And then if the lyrics are similarly, they're, it's not really she was, going to hurt herself or she's in any danger. It's just this sort of like visual story of this guy walking around the high street and trying to find her. Then I do wonder like what particular lyrical elements I missed, or whether it really just is this sort of eccentric story about trying to find your friends in a really crazy outfit. So yeah, like definitely when I heard his 80s stuff, it was already like, wow, he's kind of in his own lane. Like, yeah, 80s synth pop, but in a way that's different from pretty much everyone else I've heard. And then here we're in the early 90s, and I've been going through Madonna's early 90s stuff, and I've heard like Massive Attack and their early 90s material, and some other groups that were, notable and, popular at the time, but this is just like off in its own alley in a really crazy way. So yeah, ultimately I'm curious to hear what people have to say about this. Once again, shout out to Stan. Let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Peace.